Hello and welcome to the webinar. I'm Chloe Rigby, editor of InternetRetailing.net, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Cutting Through the AI Hype, How Using the Right AI Will Improve Your Bottom Line and Help You Stand Out in a Crowded Marketplace. There's a change to the lineup today since Phrasee Chief Executive Parry Imam can't be with us. So over the next hour or so, we'll be hearing from Jasper Pye, Head of Product at Phrasee, and Saul Lopes, Customer Lifecycle Lead, at Virgin Holidays, as they discuss how using AI in your marketing can help you increase customer engagement and sales. At the end of today's webinar, we'll move into a Q&A session. So ahead of that, let me explain how to ask any questions that you may have. On the control panel on your screen, you'll see a chat box. Write your question in that box and press send. We'll aim to answer as many questions as we can today. The session is recorded, so also to remind you that after the webinar finishes, we'll be sending out an email with a link so you can watch it again whenever it's convenient for you. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Jasper Pye, Head of Product at Phrasee. Jasper, welcome to the webinar.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out to join our webinar today. As was mentioned, my name's Jasper. I'm Head of Product at Phrasee, so I'm responsible for ensuring that our product is really on point for our customers and is generating the best kind of returns on investment. To give you guys a little bit of background, obviously we're going to be talking about how brands, specifically in this case Virgin Holidays, have used our AI to transform the way they speak to their customers online. For those of you who don't know, Phrasee is an AI tool. It has two schools of AI: natural language generation, which means we're able to generate human-sounding, brand-compliant language at scale. And then it has a proprietary deep learning engine, which, based on a continuous results feedback, is able to optimize towards the response metrics and generate you continued uplift. Just to give you a little bit of a background, this isn't just a show-off slide. We do work with some really great brands, including Virgin Holidays, but it's more just to showcase that in terms of your interaction with these brands in an email context, you probably experienced our AI in action. They're all using Phrasee's AI tech to test out subject lines on their audience and optimize based on the results feedback. In terms of the type of AI that we're talking about today, we're not going to be talking about this kind of doomsday super AI where machines are a massive order smarter than humans. What we're talking about is a school of AI which is called narrow AI. That doesn't mean that it's detrimentally worse. It just means that it's about solving a specific problem. So the kind of where we're at with AI in the marketplace today is it's about finding a specific problem you may have in your daily work life, and then using a machine to automate that process to get you better results. And this is because machines are really good at looking at a large number of data points, and they're able to figure out patterns within those. So that's the type of tech that Phrasee is. So at this point, I'm going to introduce my co-panelist today, Saul Lopes. He's the Customer Lifecycle Lead at Virgin Holidays. We've been working together for 3 years now, which basically means that he's been using AI since before it was cool. Over to Saul.
Hello all, great to meet you. So yes, as Jasper said, we've been using Phrasee for the past 3 years. So I would just like to walk you through a little bit about our transformation and give you a little bit of context of how we did it and which steps we took. So the Virgin way. So I'd like to say that the reason that we were able to innovate and the reason that we were able to do our results is just the way our culture is. And no, all Virgin companies don't just sit beside Richard Branson. He's way too busy for that. But we all do share the same culture. So basically, the Virgin way is all about we give a damn. This is the more human bit of our culture. So we're led with our hearts in our heads, and that's what you see mostly in the Virgin Atlantic service when you're on one of their aircraft by the flight attendant. Why not? So we like putting on a good fight, and we're not afraid to fail. So we always like to try things new. The wow factor also unites us all, and that's what you see in the Virgin Red advertising and what you kind of see more externally. But the basically the value that I like the most is the screw it one. So we're not afraid to challenge convention. We're not afraid to try something new. And this really helped with our journey onto digital transformation and bringing in AI into our business. So where we came from, we basically had exactly the same type of problems that many businesses had out there. So we had a very complex email setup with 3 different tools in order to send an email. We had a marketing team, a marketing and CRM team with no analysts and no data analysts in the background. So that wasn't a good thing from the start. Communications had very limited personalization, and when I mean limited, I'm just talking about first name personalization and a little bit less. And then there was no culture of subject line testing or creative testing, and the whole reason there wasn't is just because we're too busy. We don't have enough resources for it. So we had to change. And several months into the job, I kind of had stumbled into a problem. As a marketer, and as we all love to do, we all love to think big and have big vision on big ideas. But we work at Virgin Holidays in a very agile and quick environment. So that my big idea, my big plan kind of got shut down from the start. And they said, how can you prove me returns quickly? And how can we deliver this more incrementally? So when I was several months into the job and having my dreams shut down, I had the problem of how am I going to impress my boss? What am I going to do? So it really forced me to think in a different way and try to look at different tools and try to look at different ways we can bring in a little bit of innovation without changing our whole infrastructure. That's where we kind of went on our plan of change and how we actually did a change. Very first one is prove yourself with quick wins. So here was this new person entering into a job in an organization that no one knew me. Why should we spend all this money with you? You haven't proven anything yet. So I had to really rethink everything and look at how can I prove myself with quick wins? How can I bring in new tools into the company without changing the infrastructure that we currently had in place. Then we had to get the basics sorted. So as we started proving results, yes, we had to change our ESP and we had to change our data models a bit in order to set us up for change. So we did that. And then 3, after showing great results 2 times, we were able to start the major transformations and actually bring in the multi-billion-pound budgets. So I had a problem at the time, and actually 3 years ago, I wasn't looking at finding AI. I wasn't looking on the marketplace with AI. I knew it was around, but I just had a problem. So many times this happens with us. So our marketing director comes up to us and says, "Okay, why won't you test that email with 5 different variants?" And we all just smile and say, yes, it's all fine. But internally, we're kind of thinking, oh God, now we have to create 5 emails instead of 1. So testing is very labor intensive, and testing does take a lot of time out of the team. So how am I going to test at scale without increasing the workload of the team? And that is when I found Phrasee. So I found Phrasee 3 years ago. I was their first full service customer. And what I saw about Phrasee is a really good way to solve my problem. So my problem is how am I going to test at scale? Suddenly I had an AI tool that was able to create subject lines in the Virgin brand voice and quickly in less than a minute. So I finally found very, very quickly a solution to my problem and what I could bring. So better than the best way to do this is actually to show you how Phrasee works. And in parallel, I'll kind of explain to you how the big subject line palaver happens within companies. So many times we are in our companies, subject lines generate so much interest and go through so many needless meetings. So everything kind of starts first with your copywriter writing out the subject line. Then your copywriter, then the subject lines go to your head of creative. Then your head of creative goes and rewrites everything that the copywriter wrote. And then you continue, and the subject lines continue going around your organization. Now it's reached the marketing director. The marketing director now says that that subject line is too long and it has to be short so she can see it completely on her iPhone. And then that subject line, after that meeting from the marketing director, then goes to the sales director. And then the sales director says, oh, you know what? My wife told me that if you put emojis in subject lines, they'll have bigger open rates. And then you're running around your organization, going around and around. And since I've been here complaining about this problem, I already created 10 brand compliant subject lines through Phrasee. So as you see, very, very quickly, I was able to test at scale and create a whole amount of variations without any human bias. And now, since it's numbers and since it's metrics that's driving the change, I no longer have to be dragged into these meetings, into these long meetings, because it's data that's proven. It's data that's proving the winner. It's not the human bias within the organization.
And just to explain, so what exactly has happened there? So in the process of Saul generating those 10 brand compliant or 9 brand compliant subject lines to test out against his human control, Phrasee's AI kind of runs through 2 processes. So you have this real-time language generation. So the natural language generation system is able to generate these subject lines at scale. It can generate hundreds of thousands of different combinations. And then what it does is, based on the deep learning engine, it ranks them through and determines the optimal set to be testing out in your audience. And it's looking at the high order interaction between individual elements. So it's not focusing too much on specifics. So it then determines this optimal set, and then you test ongoing. And then so each time you feed the results back, it will generate a new set to test, and each time it's testing out a whole different set of parameters. And this is how you see that continued optimization and that ongoing uplift across your full audience. What I'd like to do just to kind of show, to give a little bit of an example, is to run a quick test. So this was a set of subject lines that Virgin actually sent out. What I'd like you guys to do is just take a couple of seconds. We're worried too much about the technicalities of getting this right, so we haven't got an actual poll set up. But if you could just have a look at them and determine which one you think would be the human control. So I'm just going to skip ahead. And as you can see, I've highlighted number 2, which is give Blue Monday a makeover. So this was the human control on this specific test. Now I'm going to ask another question. No, I've gone too far ahead. Which one was the winner of the test? And as you can see, I wasn't very, very, very well prepared for this moment, so I've already highlighted it. But this was the one highlighted down the bottom. It's reserved. Find out what the Caribbean has to give. So this was the AI-generated subject line. And in this specific example, it achieved at least 20% uplift over the human control. So you can imagine what that translates into in terms of incremental revenue on a final send.
And one thing I would like to add on these subject lines here is that, as you see, that there's no sales message in the subject line. So it was actually, this is where I like to highlight the human bias. So at the time when I was generating subject lines with the copywriter, if we had a 10% sales message, or we have a 20% off sales message, that 20% off sales message would be included in every single subject line, just because it's obvious that we have to lead with the big commercial offer. What we found out with Phrasee, with the time, was that actually those subject lines aren't the highest performers. The highest performers are the ones that drive curiosity, that don't have the sales message. So it really helped us break that human bias internally when we started testing it out.
And we can sort of show this example on the next slide, where we have a look at these charts, which are kind of showing specific things. So we've got a few things going on here, which is all stuff that Phrasee measures. But what these graphs show is that, for example, in the top left corner with directness, maybe your audience responds to directness across a series of 3 or 4 sends. So you immediately start to think, okay, my subject lines need to be more direct. But what we've seen is, over a period of time, is that in the top left corner we have subject lines that don't have much directness that have performed well. But then in the bottom right corner, we have subject lines that have a very high level of directness that haven't performed well. And this is consistent across all things. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the same with length. Sometimes long subject lines perform well, sometimes short subject lines perform well, sometimes they both perform badly. And it's with stuff like this is if you start to focus too much on the specific elements and that human bias of, oh, someone told me length is short subject lines are better than long subject lines, that's where you can get trapped in this really limited space, and you're not testing out as much as you possibly can. So I just wanted to end. Oh, I'm just going to hand back over to Saul, who's going to talk about his visual transformation.
Yes, so just giving a little bit more context, a visual cue of how we kind of went through our transformation and done it. So we were really, really basic when we started out, and as you can see, really basic emails looking really just first name personalization. For bringing in these tools like Phrasee that without changing our IT infrastructure, we were able to do big steps in terms of changes, bringing a lot more personalization, bringing a lot more reach in terms of subject lines. And then we were able to even improve that year after year through our major transformations. So we always continuously improved on what we did before, and we kind of showed it both visually and both financially to our organization. So what was the results? So overall, year on year, what we started seeing with Phrasee is seeing a 2 percentage points increase in open rates. So I had around 20%, that went up to 22. And since we do have a really good attribution model at Virgin Holidays where we look at the value of all of the customer touch points, including email. And although it's just 2 percentage points, we're talking about multi-million pounds of revenue. And what that did right in the beginning of transformation was led to the conversation within my organization, why don't we change ESP? I finally proved myself. I finally showed the organization the value of email and value of our transformations and bringing in technology. Suddenly I was able to bring in the big change, which is changing my ESP, which we changed at the time to Adobe Campaign. So it was a really good way, quick way, and without any GDPR conversations and GDPR contracting to bring innovation and change to the organization. And those results continued again. So our very first big campaign that we did, we also had 66% increase of awareness of opens, and that mainly due to Phrasee and its subject lines. We had a 30% increase of web traffic, 37% increase of revenue, and 30% increase of calls. So we're able to always improve all of our results from the year before.
So the important thing here is with when you want to use AI is really to spend some time thinking about identifying a problem that you may have. So you want to spend a lot of time, 95% of your time identifying the problem, and then you can spend 5% of the time looking to solve your solution using a machine. There's kind of, I've got to be honest, there's two main things that you should look at if you're out there choosing an AI solution for a problem you may have. Don't just think I need to use AI for the sake of it because it's cool and it's a buzzword and everyone's talking about it in the media. That you basically want to figure out if it's going to make you more money or it's going to be a time saver that saves you money. Those are pretty much the two things that you should be looking at. So I just wanted to end on a slide, a bit of a shameless plug to our website. It would be great if you guys could maybe pop over after the webinar, after we've answered some questions, and check out some of our resources. We've got some tools on there. We've got some downloads. There's some useful information about how you can use AI to get a better uplift in your email campaigns. And that is it from us.
So that makes it time for the Q&A session. So Jasper and Saul, thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. We've got a few questions that have come in already, but if you are out there and you have a question that you'd like to ask, let me remind you again how to ask it. On the control panel on your screen, you'll see a chat box. Write your question there, press send. If your question is directed to one person in particular, then please do mark it, and we'll aim to get to as many questions as we can today. If we don't get to yours, we'll follow up offline later. So the first question is for Saul. Saul, how did you manage to find the budget to experiment with AI?
Yeah, I actually see this happening a lot in various different businesses, is that We usually start off the year and we usually fill up all of our budget from January, from the beginning of the year. All our budget for the whole year is already spent. I always try to avoid that as much as possible and only try to have kind of like 70% of it spent and leave 30% for any type of digital innovation that may come in. So many times I see people with tons of agency fees within their budget lines, and then right at the start of the year, they can't bring anything new. They can't innovate during the year because it's all going in agency fees, and it's all being spent from the start. So as a rule of thumb, I never start a budget year with all my budget spent. I always make sure that there's 30% there that I can play with so I can bring in innovation.
I will stay with you for the next question. Were you nervous using an AI tool to write in your brand voice?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I wasn't nervous about AI, but we were second guessing it a bit in a way. So we started using it, and what we started to do is correct the AI subject lines ourselves, what we thought was better. The interesting bit is when we were correcting the subject lines ourselves, we didn't get any value of it, so we didn't start seeing any results. Only when Victoria at Phrasee kind of talked to us and say, "Hey, you guys are gaming the system," we kind of started actually using it the way it should be used, and we kind of let AI do its job. As soon as we kind of let AI do its job, we started seeing the results. We started seeing the open rates go up. So yeah, I think this was 3 years ago. So now a lot more people are used to AI. AI is part of our day-to-day life. But I think there'll always be a little bit of nervousness in the beginning, and also AI experiments with everything. If it didn't experiment with anything, I wouldn't have learned that salesy subject lines don't work on my base. So it's important to try, and it's important to let AI do its job.
There have been some really interesting findings, haven't there? That's great. The next question is for Jasper. So Jasper, does Phrasee only write language in English?
No. So currently we work in most of the major European languages. So we've got customers who are generating in Italian, Spanish, French, Danish, and German.
Okay, that's great. Staying with you, someone asks, how is Phrasee able to write in our brand voice?
So there's a setup process with Phrasee. It's not just an out-the-box solution. So we spend a lot of time working with a new customer to onboard them and to build a bespoke language algorithm that's tailored around the way they speak to their audience, what their brand tone of voice is. And this process is sort of usually 3 to 4 weeks after we start working with someone. And then even after that process is completed, it's not a fixed solution. It's a continual process of evolution and feedback to build out an algorithm that's perfect for your marketing calendar and the way you talk to your audience.
That's great. And then, are there any other products on the horizon?
Yes, so we have a couple of different applications for the technology. So we've just expanded into Facebook advertising. So we're working on a full end-to-end solution which will be able to generate ad body text to test out in Facebook sponsored campaigns, and using our deep learning engine to then optimize that based on the results feedback. And we're also currently working with push notifications, so driving more app opens using Phrasee generated text.
That's great. Well, that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. So let me end this webinar by thanking everyone for taking part. Thank you to our listeners for listening to the webcast and asking their questions. I'd also like to thank our speakers, Jasper Pye, Head of Product at Phrasee, and Saul Lopes, Customer Lifecycle Lead at Virgin Holiday. Thanks both for joining us today. And thanks to our listeners. And as always, we'll follow up by email with a link to the on-demand webinar, which you can listen again to at your convenience. We'll be asking you what you thought of today's webinar in an exit survey that you'll see as you leave today. So thank you all once again for taking part in this webinar, and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone.